guys, welcome to another edition of All Things Real Estate. It is Thursday and I'm coming to you today to talk about something that probably isn't super fun to talk about or think about, but it is super important, and that is, how do we deal with inherited property? What do we do with mom or dad's house when they pass away? What do we do with our own house if our spouse passes away, and that kind of thing? How can we set ourselves up for success in those situations to get the property sold and make everybody happy at the same time? That's what we're talking about today. I had a situation with a closing just this week that I learned some things from as an agent. Even though I've been doing this for 11 years, I learned some things from that one this week. So I wanted to share that with you guys today. Stay tuned.
All things real estate and all things real estate.
Okay, so inherited property. The first thing that, if you call me to help you sell a property, the first thing that I'm going to ask you is, did the person that passed away have a will? That is super helpful. So I really encourage all of you, if you have a situation where you think you might inherit some property from, like I said, mom or dad, or if you own a property with your spouse, everybody needs to have a will. It's super helpful if you do. Let me give you a scenario that happened to me a couple years ago where a spouse passed away without a will. So my client wanted to sell the house that he and his wife had owned together for about 20 years. He was a stepdad, and when his wife passed away without a will, what ended up happening was 50% of her share goes to him, and then 50% of her share goes to her heirs. I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. 50% goes to either one. So her 100% of her share of her ownership, 50% of it goes to him, 50% of that ownership goes to her daughters. So what does that mean? That means that my client, inherited basically what he owned was 75% of the property when he sold it, and then her daughters owned 25% of that property when we sold it. So he kind of had a rude awakening with that situation, because in his mind, that was his house with his wife, and he thought that he was going to get all the proceeds. But because she didn't have anything in writing that said who she wanted her 50% to go to, it had to be divided between him, he is an heir of hers, and then also her daughters. So that was not super fun getting to closing and having, we knew before closing, but that was kind of eye-opening for him to find that out, that he wasn't going to get, the full value of the home that he had owned with his wife for 20 years. So bottom line, have a will. The other thing that I would tell you is what I learned from this closing that I had this last week was, even if you have a will, it might be best in certain cases to go ahead and probate that will before you try to sell the property. If you think that there's anyone else that could lay a claim to the inherited property, it is best to go ahead and probate it. The other the other option that you have is to work with whoever you think might have a claim to that property and come up with an agreement on what that other party is going to get from the sale, which is kind of what happened with our closing. So what happened with our closing was, my client wanted to sell the house that she and her husband owned. He had passed away within the last 6 months, but she was also a step parent. So these blended families gets kind of tricky. So we had a will. It said that she gets the house, but because it wasn't probated and because he had passed away within the last 6 months, the title company had us jump through a few more hoops than what I had experienced in the past. And bottom line, it would have been best probably for that will to be probated before we tried to sell the house. The stepchild did have an interest, quote unquote, in the property, and my client worked it out with her before closing, and so everybody ended up happy and fine in the end. But I did learn that it may have been better in that situation to go ahead and probate the will. With moms and dads that pass away, If siblings all get along and everybody is on the same page, it's usually just evenly divided between the siblings. There can be cases where siblings don't get along and it gets real sticky. So again, a will is super, super helpful in that situation. So those are kind of my tips and tricks and stories that I have for you today. I hope that they were helpful. And if you have a situation with an inherited property, or you're thinking about doing some estate planning and things, I am happy to talk to you about it. I'm happy to put you in touch with any title companies. And let me put this little caveat here at the end. What I've been talking about is stuff in Texas, right? Different states across the United States have different rules for this kind of stuff. So this is particular to Texas. Something in another state may be totally different. So hopefully it was helpful, and I will see you next week on another edition of All Things Real Estate. Thanks again for tuning in, and if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.
All things real estate and all things real estate.